Vietnam economic highlights in 2018. And later on, 30 years of FDI into Vietnam and future prospects.
Hello and welcome to this special edition of BizLine, the last episode of the year 2018. On behalf of the BizLine team, we wish you a happy new year. Before we start our program today, let's take a look at the review of the economic highlights over the past year.
According to a report from the government, Vietnam has fulfilled all of its socio-economic development goals for 2018 and surpassed 4 of them. They are: GDP growth rate reaches 7.08%, surpassing the goal of reaching between 6.5 to 6.7%. Total export turnover reaches $482 billion. Ratio of trade deficit over the total export turnover is less than 3%. Consumer Price Index growth rate is capped under 4%. Total social investments accounts for 33% to 34% of GDP. Rate of multidimensional poverty is cut by 1% to 1.3%. Unemployment rate in urban areas is capped under 4%. Workers of eligible age who are trained through the vocational education system reaches 60%. Number of hospital beds is 26 per 10,000 people. Health insurance covers 85.2% of the population. 88% of operating industrial parks and processing zones have effective wastewater treatment systems. Forest coverage reaches 41.6%.
The GDP of Vietnam in 2018 was officially revealed to be 7.08%, which is the highest it's been in the last decade. Industries, construction and services increased from 82.6% in 2015 to 84.3% in 2018 and aim to reach 85% in 2020.
Chiều về đất nước chúng ta có một cái tin vui như vậy. Và tôi cũng xin khẳng định rằng qua các số liệu thống kê độc lập, không chỉ tăng trưởng GDP, mô hình tăng trưởng thu ngân sách nhà nước, nhất là ngân sách trung ương, lần đầu tiên chúng ta phải yên tâm là chúng ta đã có thể vượt thu ngân sách trung ương.
Office, the export turnover of 2018 reached $7.2 billion, which is 2.5 times higher than it was in 2017. This is the highest it's been in the past 10 years.
With 469 votes in favor, which account for 100% of present deputies, the 14th National Assembly passed a resolution to approve the Comprehensive and Progressive Agreement for Trans-Pacific Partnership, or CPTPP. According to the Ministry of Planning and Investment, the CPTPP may help Vietnam raise its GDP by 1.32% and export turnover by 4.04% by 2035. The CPTPP might also create 20,000 to 26,000 jobs per year for Vietnam. However, it also presents challenges for enterprises.
Nhiều lúc hàng rào thuế không phải là quá khắt khe, quá quan trọng bằng những cái hàng rào về môi trường, những hàng rào về cái quan hệ lao động, những hàng rào về các tiêu chuẩn vệ sinh an toàn thực phẩm. Đấy là những cái hàng rào rất là cao, rất là khó, rất là ngặt nghèo mà các doanh nghiệp Việt Nam phải vượt qua.
The FDI of 11 CPTPP members accounts for about 25% of the total FDI in Vietnam. Japan ranks first in terms of investments in Vietnam with 41.5%. Singapore ranks second with 38.3%, and Malaysia is third with 11.7%.
2018 saw many billion US dollars corporation launch IPOs with the record market capitalization of Ho Chi Minh City Development Joint Stock Commercial Bank, Vinhome, Vietnam Technological and Commercial Joint Stock Bank, and Tiền Phong Commercial Joint Stock Bank. 5 years ago, there was only one enterprise with market capitalization of $1 billion. Now there are more than 20. In the past 5 years, the stock market of Vietnam grew from 30% over GDP to 70% over GDP, which completed the goal set by the government 3 years in advance. In 2017 and the first 6 months of 2018, over 90% of listed enterprises reported relatively high profit.
In mid-September 2018, the administration of US President Donald Trump imposed 10% tariffs on $200 billion worth of Chinese goods. As Chinese goods face difficulties to access the US market, it will probably target other markets. Even if the investment flows into the ASEAN market, Vietnam has to compete with many other rivals. Vietnam lost one spot from last year on the World Bank's Ease of Doing Business report, which shows the need for reform.
Từ phía bên nội bộ Việt Nam thì tôi cho rằng là điều cần nhất hiện nay là phải cải cách kinh tế, đặc biệt là vấn đề thể chế để cho chúng ta có tính thị trường nhiều hơn. Thì đó là cái việc sẽ giúp cho Việt Nam đỡ bị sa vào những cái rủi ro bất thường. Ngoài ra thì Việt Nam cần phải củng cố các cái yếu tố căn bản của mình để giảm thiểu những cái tổn thương khi mà rủi ro nó đến với Việt Nam. Mà những yếu tố cơ bản đấy nó gồm có ví dụ như là các vấn đề về ngân sách của Việt Nam phải cân đối tốt hơn, chi tiêu phải có kiểm soát tốt hơn, hay là môi trường kinh doanh của Việt Nam phải được cải thiện nhiều hơn, các cái vấn đề về hành chính, các vấn đề về ứng xử của khu vực nhà nước đối với khu vực doanh nghiệp.
Investments will flow into the most favorable places. US-China trade war can be an opportunity or a challenge, depending on the capability of Vietnam.
And that's it for the economic highlights over the past year. Up next in our crosstalk, we'll review the 30 year of FDI into Vietnam and discuss the future prospect of foreign direct investment in Vietnam in the coming year.
On December 29, 1987, Vietnam's National Assembly promulgated the law on foreign investment, marking one of the milestones in the integration process. According to experts, the 1987 law paved the way for foreign direct investment and proved effective. This law has been amended 5 times to adjust to national economic growth in each phase of development. According to the Foreign Investment Agency of the Ministry of Planning and Investment, FDI contributed 5.6% to GDP from 1987 to 1996, 11% in the 1997 to 2016 period, and nearly 20% at present. FDI enterprises have created 3.6 million direct jobs and 6 million indirect jobs in Vietnam. After 30 years of attracting FDI, Vietnam has lured 26.5 thousand projects from 129 countries and territories, worth $334 billion in registered capital.
This year marks 3 decades of foreign direct investment, or FDI, a key contributor to Vietnam's economic growth. Amid global uncertainty, geopolitical complexity, and rising protectionism, Vietnam is taking stronger steps to reform its FDI sector. Since the first foreign project invested in Vietnam in 1988, FDI has created a new form of capital attraction, contributing to economic growth and efficient use of domestic resources. It has also helped promote Vietnam's national brands and global image. To understand more about how FDI has contributed to the Vietnamese economy during the past 30 years and what needs to be improved and forecast of FDI inflow in the years to come, we invite to our studio today Mr. Raymond Malon, Economic Advisor, Australia-Vietnam Economic Reform Program. Thank you very much, Mr. Raymond, for joining our program today.
Pleasure to be here.
What is your opinion about the impacts of FDI in the Vietnamese economy?
It's had a major impact. When you think of 1988, when Vietnam was a very different place and the economy was largely dependent on agricultural commodities. The FDI has come in, it's helped in transferring technology, ideas, skills, providing access to new markets. More generally, it's made Vietnam known throughout the world. It doesn't matter where you go now, you see Vietnamese products in the shops. It doesn't matter whether it's clothing, footwear, electronics, the whole gambit. Vietnam's very much on the international stage, partly as a result of the foreign direct investment.
Mm-hmm. When was your first trip to Vietnam?
First came to Vietnam when I was with the Asian Development Bank, and that was back in 1988, but have stayed on. So I've been living here since 91.
So how has Vietnam changed since your first time to Vietnam in 1988 and now?
When I first came here in 88, there was major macroeconomic instability. Now you have a thriving, rapidly growing middle-income country that's rapidly changing.
So how attractive is Vietnam compared to other countries in the region in terms of attracting FDI?
I think the numbers speak for itself. When you look at the ratio of foreign direct investment as a percentage of GDP, it's one of the highest in the world, and even among the other Southeast Asian nations, it's one of the highest. Most of the ones that are investing now have invested here for some decades and continue to expand, continue to do business. So certainly it's very, very positive. Of course, nothing's perfect, and there's areas where there's still scope for improvement. There's still a fair bit of regulatory inconsistency, complexity that is probably not in Vietnam's interest. So, the government's got an ongoing program of regulatory reform. They've moved to try and unify the regulatory environment for all businesses so that you get strong competition. And I think getting that competition there is critically important, having competition between the different foreign investors, between the foreign and the domestic investors, and also having the state enterprises compete on a level playing field. That competition is what gives you innovation, it's what promotes growth.
Yeah, so I think the Vietnamese government is also trying to make the business condition in Vietnam more welcoming, trying to encourage the startup community here. So
yes.
Is it like examples of the policy that you are mentioning?
That's right. I think that's since 2012. The private sector, the government has really focused on removing a lot of these regulatory barriers for businesses generally, but they were the sort of barriers that particularly made it harder for smaller, mostly domestic, but also the smaller foreign investors to come in here. So a lot of this regulatory reform, this work that's been done with the Resolution 19 and Resolution 35 to improve the business environment, targeting, reaching ASEAN 4 standards in terms of doing business and the World Economic Forum indicators.
After 30 years of attracting FDI, Vietnam has significant experience in understanding foreign investors' requirements, expectations, and behaviors. Business forums and conferences have often been organized, showing the government's effort in listening to opinions from foreign investors and enterprises. In just the fourth quarter of 2018, 3 big conferences took place in Vietnam, including the World Economic Forums on ASEAN 2018, Vietnam Business Forum, and the conference to review 30 years of FDI. During these conferences, Vietnam ensured continuing to create favorable conditions for FDI enterprises.
Sự ủng hộ của nhà nước, nhà đầu tư, của doanh nghiệp và người dân đã có những đóng góp quan trọng vào sự thành công của hoạt động đầu tư nước ngoài trong suốt 30 năm qua. Môi trường đầu tư của Việt Nam đã tiếp tục không ngừng được cải thiện, mang tính cạnh tranh với khu vực, mang tính liên vùng, tạo sự lan tỏa phát triển, giải pháp thu hút đầu tư gắn với chuyển đổi cơ cấu kinh tế và mục tiêu phát triển bền vững.
Among favorable policies for foreign investors, Decree 19 on business environment and competitiveness development and Decree 35 on supporting businesses until 2020 played an important role. After 5 years of implementation, Vietnam's business environment has risen 30 places in the World Bank's Doing Business report.
Speaking of competition, some may say that domestic enterprises are still small and weak compared to foreign ones. So what do you think about this opinion?
I think the situation has improved dramatically over the last few years. I think a big step that Vietnam made was when they enacted the enterprise law in 2000, and that really started to lay the foundations for the emergence of a more medium-sized enterprise for a more formal corporate sector. But even it's really been the last 3 or 4 years where the private sector has been able to engage in international activities. So you've got quite a few domestic firms now acting as subcontractors for foreign investors or directly engaging in trade. So I think it's starting to happen, and I think it's really very important for the future of Vietnamese economy. It's important for sustainability, but even for foreign investors. They want to cooperate with domestic companies for supplying some of the inputs. It'll be done much more cost effectively.
What's your assessment of the linkages between domestic enterprises and foreign investors in the production value chain?
It has been very weak up until relatively recently. As we were just discussing, one of the problems is if the enterprises have been very small, the domestic private sector has been relatively small, and it's very hard for many of the foreign investors to engage with a smaller company. The cost of doing the transaction are very high, or just as high for a small or as a medium, so they want to do with bigger companies. So I think the emergence of the more medium, upper end, larger corporate sector is providing more opportunities for the foreign investors to develop the links and to use domestic businesses as subcontractors. And I think that'll happen more and more in the future.
One of the goals of attracting FDI is technological transfer, yes, that the domestic sector can learn more from the foreign investors. How do you think of the level of technological transfer right now?
Some aspects of manufacturing and agriculture where you would like to see a greater rate of transfer. Vietnam's got the basic foundation for transferring technology. The basic system of education, primary and secondary education, is very, very good compared with most other countries in the region. Under the OECD PISA rankings, Vietnam always is one of the highest in the region. Not quite as high as Singapore or Japan, but above Thailand, Philippines and other countries. So that's there. The problem is you don't have regional standard universities, and vocational training's a problem. The government's recently introduced new provisions to make it easier for foreign investment to come into providing that sort of training, and I think that's a great idea.
Yeah, so hopefully we will see more FDI projects in the education sector.
I hope so, yes,
in the coming year.
So that's important, and then of course continuing the investment with IT infrastructure, that's important. Also, you have to be thinking, I think, increasingly in the future about how you make it attractive for people that are going into the high-tech industry to stay in Vietnam if you're Vietnamese, or to attract the best talent internationally to come here, because the sort of people that work in that area are going to be very mobile, including a lot of the Vietnamese are going to have options elsewhere. So it's important to see that the incentives are here to make them stay here, or to encourage them to stay here.
For more than 20 years, this company has supplied plastic materials to big brands such as Toyota, Honda and LG. The profit from trading with FDI partners reached $26 million in 2017, accounting for 80% of its total revenue.
Từ khi mà mình đã hợp tác với họ thì họ cũng support cho mình, và mình cũng phải tự mình nâng cao cái trình độ về quản trị doanh nghiệp, đào tạo nguồn nhân lực và đầu tư cơ sở hạ tầng, đầu tư vào khoa học công nghệ, làm sao đó để sản xuất ra các sản phẩm đạt được yêu cầu chất lượng của họ.
According to experts, domestic enterprises can fulfill FDI companies' requirements regarding technology and high-skilled workers. However, even after 30 years of attracting FDI, connections between domestic and FDI enterprises are still poor.
Các doanh nghiệp lớn vào Việt Nam thì họ đem theo rất nhiều các doanh nghiệp nhỏ cung cấp các cái part cho họ để họ lắp ráp lên một cái sản phẩm tổng thể. Mà nếu như vậy thì các doanh nghiệp Việt Nam rất khó để chen chân vào cái chuỗi cung cấp cho họ được.
Experts also claim that it's high time to boost cooperation between domestic and FDI companies.
Một cái yêu cầu quan trọng hàng đầu hiện nay là làm thế nào nâng cấp được cái doanh nghiệp nội địa, các doanh nghiệp vừa và nhỏ, cả về công nghệ và về quản trị. Khi nâng cấp được về công nghệ quản trị thì họ sẽ đạt tới cái chuẩn mực quốc tế, và khi đạt được chuẩn mực quốc tế thì có thể kết nối được với các FDI.
Để chúng ta có thể có đào tạo được một đội ngũ nó lâu dài thì hai bên Việt Nam và doanh nghiệp đầu tư theo cái hình thức là công ty trách nhiệm hữu hạn hoặc là công ty cổ phần thì có các cái thỏa thuận với nhau về các cái điều kiện là thay thế các cái đội ngũ nhân sự của phía bên Việt Nam. Là làm gì là khi mà chúng ta đã nắm chắc được cái công nghệ thứ rồi thì cho lùi về phía sau, lại cho số người mới lên để tiếp tục đào tạo.
Regarding the legal framework, experts propose having a specific regulation on incentives as well as punishments for FDI enterprises that don't implement their commitment on localization rates.
So now I would like to talk about FDI into Vietnam in 2018. What's your assessment on the level of FDI pouring into Vietnam in 2018?
The biggest risk that Vietnam faces is the global risk with the increasing protectionism being led by the US, which had been the leader of the international free trade in the past. That's a big risk. Trade wars, not good for anyone. It's causing a lot of uncertainty, I think, internationally. Vietnam is very highly dependent on foreign trade, as the ratio of foreign trade to GDP, again, is one of the highest in the world, and that's great in terms of creativity and opportunities, but it also makes Vietnam very vulnerable to any global downturn. So I think that's the biggest risk. But I'm optimistic. Overall, there's just too many good stories, I think, in some ways in Vietnam. There's a certain momentum which of increasing foreign investment and particularly moving up the value into the computers, the electronics, this incredibly strong growth in tourism.
Do you think Vietnam's engagement in different free trade agreements will help it attract more FDI into?
That's right, yes. It'll give you access to markets. It's going to make that, if you've got access to markets, it's going to make it more attractive for foreign investors to come in to produce here, to access those markets. There's a very close correlation between trade and foreign investment. So, and also a lot of these new free trade agreements are not just about lowering tariffs. They, in many ways, that's a minor part of it. Many of the new agreements about getting rid of the beyond the border barriers, the non-tariff measures that are barriers to trade. And also things like services liberalisation. So if you get more investment and more competition in things like logistics and telecommunications, financial services, having a stronger growth and productivity in those areas will make it easier or more attractive for manufacturing to come in. It'll improve the efficiency in Vietnam.
We produce in the same way we produce in Europe for the EMEA market, and no any particular problem here. Everything is very smooth, and we can do and follow the business as much we can.
Asian countries, there are 600 million people, and Vietnam is in the heart of these 10 countries, and this will be a good opportunity for the Italian company that come in Vietnam not only to sell to local market, but also to expand their production to the neighbors, to the other countries nearby Vietnam.
The potential is still very big. As a company, we are growing, as an international group, we're growing between 20 to 30% every year. In Vietnam, we're now currently growing to between 20 to 25% every month. So it is a very good market. We are here to stay, not just to produce, but to actually be part of the economy. So we're looking forward to make further investment in the future.
So what is your forecast of FDI into Vietnam in the coming year, and what sectors to keep a close watch on?
I can't imagine that the ratio of FDI to GDP is likely to increase, and maybe it even comes back because it is very high by global standards. But it will still be, Vietnam's obviously going to be a continually attractive place to invest. I think you will continue to see strong investment in the upper end of the manufacturing, both computers, mobiles, all that sort of, but also some others like furniture, anything like that's labour intensive, probably moving into the design elements of furniture. I think there it's going to be very important to get a good regulatory framework in place for things like e-commerce, because increasingly, say, furniture, you know, people are ordering online, even footwear online, and then you've got to get it out to the markets very quickly. So thinking about how you do trade facilitation will be very important for improving the environment to attract continued investment in those areas. The other is there will be, I think, even stronger growth in the service sector investment. So I would imagine tourism, even education, health services, and things like logistics, the trade services.
Thank you very much, Mr. Raymond, for joining our program today. In the face of a changing global economy characterized by growing protectionism and financial instability, Vietnam is set to reform its approach to FDI attraction. The Ministry of Planning and Investment is mapping out a new strategy for foreign direct investment attraction. As recommended in the report, the top priority is implementing specific policies to strengthen the connectivity of value chains and spillover effects of FDI. With these efforts, hopefully we will see more FDI channeled in the high-tech sector, green and sustainable growth. And that also wraps up this last episode of BizLine for 2018. On behalf of our BizLine team here in Hanoi, we would like to thank you for your accompanying throughout the year, and we wish you a happy new year. Thanks for watching, and goodbye for now.